beginner's tutorial for Java, and we're going to be creating a Hello World Java program in this, which is the free Eclipse integrated development environment for Java. I'm going to assume that you've already installed the JDK, the JRE, and Eclipse itself. Go to the workbench, which is where we'll do our work appropriately enough, and go to File, New Java Project, and give your project a name. I'm going to call this Tutorial 1, but you can call it anything you like. Click Next, and we can accept the defaults again on this screen. Click Finish, and now we've got this tutorial folder here, and you can see that you've got the Java system libraries included, and you've got this empty source folder. If you right click on the project folder, you can then go to New Class, and we need a class here that will be the only class that our Hello World program contains. And you can call it anything you like, but I'm going to call it Application. And here you can see a box which you can tick to get Eclipse to create a main method for you. That will be the actual starting point of our program, the entry point. And you need to have one of these in every program that you create somewhere. So I'll tick this box just to save us a bit of typing, and then click Finish. And now we've got our class. It's called Application, and we've got a main method, a standard main method, which every program has, and which will fire off your program code. If you look at this stuff, this is just a Java comment. This is actually formatted for the java.program, but you don't need to worry about that. Just get rid of it for the moment. And I'll get rid of this comment as well, just by hitting the back key. And here I'm going to type sysout and press Control Space, and Eclipse auto completes, and you can see here I've got a println method, which is Java's way of writing to the console. In there I'm going to type two speech marks, so double quotes. What is going on with my computer? Okay, there we go. I'll just put some text in there. Hello World, which is traditional. And this blank line under there I'm going to get rid of by selecting it and pressing Ctrl D, which is a handy shortcut. And this is a finished Java program, and I can run it by clicking the Run button, this green button here. Eclipse might ask you if you want to save your files, and of course say yes. And then you can see the output down here, Hello World. If this is your first Java program, then congratulations, you are now a Java programmer. And today we're going to look at variables in Java. Don't worry if you don't understand absolutely every single last thing in this tutorial, because learning a programming language is like learning an ordinary language, and you just have to practice it, and gradually it sort of sinks into your head. I'm going to use the Hello World program from the last tutorial as a starting point here. So what is a variable? I'll give you an example. I'm going to type int, and I'm going to make up a name here, my number. Variables are like boxes that you can put values in, and we've got different sizes of boxes in Java that can hold different kinds of things, different types of boxes, I should say. And what we've done here is I've made up a name, my number, and notice I've given it a lowercase initial letter, but I've capitalized the second word of it, and that's a sort of a convention in Java. And my number is of type int, which means integer, meaning that this box can hold an integral number, a whole number, in other words, negative or positive. So here I've created the box, and we say I've declared the variable, and I can now put a value into the box. I can say my number equals 88 or whatever, and I'm now initializing the variable. So I've declared the variable here, now I'm initializing the variable, and I can output this by the same method that we used in the first tutorial. I'll type sysout, I'll press Control Space, and Eclipse creates this system.out.println, print line for me, and I can just put my number in there. And if I click the green run button, it outputs 88. Now here I've declared and initialized the variable in two separate steps, but I can declare it and initialize it at the same time. I can say equals 88 up here. I can get rid of this line, and that does just the same thing. Now in Java there are 8 primitive types of variables, and we're going to go through these really quickly, and then in the next tutorial we'll look at classes a little bit, classes and objects. So we've got an int here. An int is a 32-bit value in Java. If you don't really know what that means, don't worry, it doesn't really matter. Basically, if you want an integral number, a whole number, then use an int usually. Sometimes you'll see short, which is for well, it's a 16-bit value, so it can hold slightly smaller numbers, but still you can fit quite a lot into it, probably up to, I don't know, maybe 32,000, I think. And we can output that the same way, sysout my short. And there's also a long version of an int for really long numbers, my long. And these names here, by the way, could be anything. I could call these apple, cat, you know, absolutely anything at all. So I'm just making up names for the variables. Let's output that. Sysout my long. This is a 64-bit value for really big numbers. You can put a lot bigger numbers than this in there. There's also, what if you want a floating point number? You usually use a double. This means kind of double precision, extra precision sort of thing. So I can put, like, you know, some number in there. Sysout my double. Hey presto. And there's no long version of double, but there is a short version called float, and there's slight complication here, which is if you type a floating point number in Java like this, by default it's a double, so you have to put an F on the end of it to get a float. But these doubles and ints are the most commonly used values here. My float, the others a bit less common. In addition to these 5, there's also 3 other rather interesting types. There's a char type, which can hold a Unicode character, and you can specify a character by putting it in single quotes like this. So it can be any character on your keyboard. I'll just put Y. As I say, that's Unicode, so it's 16-bit. Unicode just means you can represent basically a whole bunch of crazy characters using this. There's a very useful Boolean type, which I guess is named after, I think it was George Boole, or possibly Boulos, I'm not sure, who invented Boolean logic, and this can just hold true or false. Sysout my Boolean. True. or I could change that to false, and that's all you can put in that. And finally, we've got the byte type, which can hold just 8 bits of data. So it's a number, negative or positive, but it can only go up to about 127, I think. And often that's quite useful because sometimes you want to represent a whole load of data by an array of bytes, and you can use this and you know precisely how much space it will take up. Okay, so that's it for declaring boxes and shoving stuff into them. In the next tutorial, we will look at some non-primitive types, classes and objects. Don't forget there's more info and tutorials on caveofprogramming.com, and I'll cover primitive types. There are 8 primitive types in Java, and in this tutorial we're going to look at our first non-primitive type, the string type. And then in the next tutorial we can look at loops, but before we do anything with loops we need to know how to represent text in Java. So I'm in Eclipse as usual, and I'm going to create a new Java project, and I'm going to give it a name. Let's call it tutorial 3, and click next and finish. Now, as in the first tutorial, we're going to create a class which will be the only class in our little test program here. I'm going to right click on the project folder and go to new class, and this time I'm not going to tick public static void main. I'm not going to ask it to create a main method just because I want to show you a different way of doing that. I'll give the class a name. I'm going to call this application. Click finish, and here is my application class. Now, every program in Java, as we saw in the first tutorial, must have a main method, and that's where the program starts. And one way of creating one, of course you could type it yourself here, but just to show you another Eclipse shortcut, I'll type main and press Control space and hit return, and hey presto, I've got a main method. The only thing is the indentation is all wrong here, and I'm going to select that and press tab once, because every time you have brackets like these, everything inside them should be indented 1 tab, otherwise you won't be able to keep track of what belongs to what. So we saw in the last tutorial that you can create an integer variable, which is kind of just a box that you can put integers into, like this. So int my int equals 7 semicolon, for example. And in the same way you can create a string type which holds text, except that it's string with an uppercase S, because string is not a primitive type, it's actually a class. And I'll call this text, for example. It could be anything, and I'll set that equal to some text, hello. So what's going on here? I'm going to labour this point a little bit because gradually I want to introduce you to the concept of objects and classes. And so string is a class, which means it's just a type. For example, in a real world we have cats, but the concept cats doesn't refer to a particular cat. It's a general type of something. It's a type of animal, in fact. And in the same way, string here is a type of object that can hold text. This is a variable which is capable of not of holding or storing a string instance, but it's capable of referring to a thing that has the type string. And don't worry if this sounds like Greek, because we'll keep coming back to it and you'll gradually get used to it. And this is actually a text object. So you've got a class here, string, and a particular instance of the class, in other words an object, here. And I can output that just by typing sysout, control space, and put text in there. And if I click run, we should get hello if my computer wasn't so horrendously slow. And you can do lots of interesting things with strings. For example, you can add them together. Let's create a string called blank, and I'll set that equal to just some empty space like that. And I'll create another string called name, and I'll set that equal to Bob. I can add all these strings together. I can say, okay, here's a string greeting, and greeting, and I'm going to put that equal to text plus blank plus name semicolon. And remember that every statement must end in a semicolon. Now if I put greeting in here, it's going to output hello and space and Bob. And in fact, you can add string objects together directly, because I can achieve the same thing if I type system.out.println, and I could write, for example, Bob plus some space plus hello. No, actually I wanted to type hello space and Bob, and then semicolon at the end of the line, and we'll get the same thing again. And you can also, if you've got, for example, an int, you can concatenate that with a string. When we add strings, we speak about concatenating. I'll type sysout control space, and for example I can say my integer is, and add my int, and if I run that, my integer is 7. Hey presto. Notice this is a very laboured way of doing this, because I could have just typed one long string that said hello space Bob, but I've, just to show you addition of strings, concatenation, I've created 3 separate strings here. Lots of other things you can do with strings, and we will look at some more things in the next tutorial. But for now, I just wanted to show you how you can output some text and you can work variables into it. And one last thing is, supposing you have some variable, let's declare a double variable, double precision floating point number, 7.8, and of course I can put that in the middle of a string as well. I can say my number is plus, well, I missed off the variable name, my double plus, and let's just have a full stop, and that will also work. My number is 7.8. That's all for this tutorial. Pretty simple. Have fun, try adding strings together and see where you get. And in the next tutorial we'll look at loops, and we'll start really leveraging the power of Java to do things that would be incredibly tedious to do by hand. That's all for this time. You can find more information and tutorials on caveofprogramming.com. I hope you'll join me again for the next tutorial. My name's John, and until next time, happy coding.